One of the most common complaints I hear from fellow DMs is that they have players that are at their table that are not fully present or engaged. And then when they're trying to run the game, these players are distracted or having side conversations. And as a DM, I understand that can be really frustrating for the dungeon master, and it can sometimes be frustrating for the other players. Now, most of the time what I see DMs do with this is they get mad at the players, and they'll start doing things like banning cell phones at the table or penalizing players for being distracted during a certain scene. Or sometimes they'll just tell me things like, well, the reason I ask players for their AC instead of just having it on the back of my DM screen is to keep them engaged in the game. Listen, if you've got to ask players for an obvious number just to keep them engaged, you've got a bigger problem. I'm going to offer up an alternate way of looking at this, and it's probably going to piss some of you off, but all I ask is that you hear me out before you drop in the comments, because I'm probably not approaching it the way you think I am. If you are having a problem with people being engaged at your table during your game sessions, maybe the problem is that you're not being engaging. Now, I know you probably think that's me being condescending or being on a high horse and acting like I am a better DM than other people. That's not true at all, because you're probably thinking I'm saying you're not skilled as a DM. Nothing could be further from the truth. I know tons of skilled DMs that still have this problem. I mean, sure, it could be a skill issue. We're all constantly working on improving our storytelling skills and our skills at designing really engaging combat all the time. I know I am. But honestly, from what I've seen, that's not what's going on most of the time. Most of the time, there's a DM who's very skilled at serving up the parts of the game that they enjoy. Let me explain to you what I mean. Everybody that shows up to a D&D session has different reasons for showing up. And just like most things in life, a lot of times we assume that everyone's showing up for the same reasons we are. So as DMs, for example, one of the things I know most DMs like, and I do, is world building and storytelling and creating this complex plot and lore. And so we love to give exposition on that or have the players explore it. And that's really great because that's the part we enjoy. But guess what? Not all players are at the table for that. Some players really like to get deep into a complex plot, and they're going to be the ones that are constantly emailing you between sessions and asking you about lore or figuring things out about your story. And it's great. We love players like that. But guess what? Not every player is showing up for that. There are other players showing up, for example, to roleplay and explore their character. You can often spot these kinds of players because they wrote a huge backstory for their character and they're constantly fiddling with them between sessions or asking you questions about their character development or wanting like special items just for roleplay purposes. These are people that are showing up to the game because they want to explore their character's story. So if you're delivering up even really amazing world building and plot, but you're not giving them room to collaborate and tell their character's part of the story enough, they're going to tune out at the table. Another example is there's some people that show up to the game because they really like the chess match between the DM and the players. These are players that really like tactical combat and having formations and strategies and trying to outmaneuver the DM. I can tell you right now, when you launch into background story and exposition with these types of players, they're going to tune out. Or yet another type of player I've seen at my tables is the player who comes to the table because they just want to get away from the realities of life. They are there for an escape, and they often want to like bash things. That's what they're there for. It's simple, it's fun. Maybe they crack open a beer while they play, and they often will play like a barbarian because they just want to blow off some steam. Now, if you have players like that at your table, it doesn't matter if you are the Stephen King of D&D storytelling. They are going to tune out when you launch into any backstory. But what they're really going to get engaged in is dynamic, fast-paced, exciting combat. Or maybe you have the other type of player, and this can be the toughest one for DMs. This is the person who shows up to the game not because they love D&D. They might like it just fine. But they show up because they just want to spend time with their friends. They really enjoy the social aspect of it. It's a way to hang out for several hours with everybody and talk and laugh and have a good time. And they really don't care what activity you're doing. They'd be totally down to do a different activity. They are there for the friendship. By the way, if you're liking this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more great tips on DMing and Dungeons & Dragons in general. And if you want an even deeper dive, drop in the description and check out the link to my Patreon. I've got tons of amazing content there for DMs and players alike. All right, now back to it. Now, as a DM, I want you to think about the different players at your table and why they're showing up to the table. And the point here is, if you're serving up the things that you think are enjoyable or fun about the game, you might be missing out on meeting them where they are for the reasons they show up to the table. So how do you overcome this? Well, number one, you try to include elements for everyone there in every single game session. So you include moments where the heavy role player can go into some backstory or some self-exploration, or they can collaboratively tell part of the story from their character's perspective in each session. For the tactician, you include some really strategic moments in combat or some cool maps where they can bring their strategic skills into play. For the person who likes your story and your world building, you're probably set. For the person who likes to smash things, just give them a bunch of goblins and let them bash their heads in. They're going to have a blast with that. And for the person who's just there for friendship, let them side talk a little, especially in scenes where it doesn't matter. Let them have some fun, recognize why they're there, and just appreciate their friendship and camaraderie at the table. If you have to pull them aside, you can just tell them, hey, there's a couple of key moments in this session. When those moments come up, I'll just give you a signal, and I just want you to let everybody pay attention during those. But then let them do their thing during the other moments. And lastly, don't forget, you're there to have fun too. So yes, include the parts that you really like and enjoy, because you should get to do that. And there's going to be a few people at the table that are engaged in that. Let those players be the ones who are engaged in those moments, because guess what? In every group, there's going to be people that pay way more attention to the plot than others, and they can be like your note takers and the group journalers who keep everybody else on track with the story. Now, drop in the comments and let me know if maybe you are a player who shows up for a different reason and what makes you show up to the table.